When we last did a video looking at Bitcoin and the trading opportunities, it was back on the 3rd of December when the price had yet to make a decisive move through 20,000. Clearly, it's all changed since then. The price has went surging through 20,000. I think we did have an order back then to buy at 20,250. That trade's been and gone. And then the price punched as high in the last few days as just shy of 42,000. But you can see it's come off quite hard. So what next? Is the top in? Is that it now for Bitcoin? And we're going to go back to more normal trading? Or is this just a sell-off before a push onwards to $50,000? Bitcoin delivered a very happy year end to any long-term hodlers or anybody who got in really in that run up since the October lows. We had that trend we'd been tracking in Bitcoin off the October lows. Quite a few touches on that trend line, did a great job. Then the price accelerated from mid-December, taking out the 20,000 level that had been something of a barrier to trade up to where we are now. Let's just flip this over to a short-term chart. Even the gains this year have been pretty spectacular. It ended last year around 29,000, New Year's Eve 2020. Then, of course, pushed up to 42,000. So another, $13,000 move off that. We're now back to where we were on Bitcoin around the 5th of Jan, also the 3rd of Jan. So is this an opportunity? I think there are always opportunities in a market as volatile as this, but I do think there is a real risk that the top is in. So I'll talk a bit more about what's been driving it, the levels to look out for, then we'll come back and look at things in more detail. Hello, I'm David Jones from Capital.com, and I thought it was time we did an update on the cryptocurrencies. Of course, if you follow markets, you know we've seen just some explosive moves for the likes of Bitcoin and Ethereum in recent weeks. So let's do a catch up, see what's been driving it and what to look out for. Because I do wonder, is a short-term top in? Have we seen enough gains for now? But more of those reasons in a second. So as usual, in this video, we'll take a look at what's been driving it. I'll talk about the levels to watch. Then we'll jump back onto the platform, look at things in more detail and see where the opportunities might be. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, if you could click on subscribe, it does help support the channel and means we can continue to push out 3 or 4 hopefully interesting videos every week. But let's catch up with what's been going on in the world of crypto. So we last looked at Bitcoin back in December, and following the break of $20,000 upwards, we did see the price of Bitcoin double in under a month. And if we look at Ethereum, we saw a similar sort of moves there from just before Christmas up until a few days ago, an explosive move higher that saw these two cryptocurrencies more than double in value in about 3 weeks. Of course, to the end of 2020, we did see a lot more positive press coverage about the wider uptake of Bitcoin by the likes of PayPal, for example, more institutional involvement in cryptocurrencies. So there was a feeling they were definitely getting a whole lot more credibility and positive coverage that they hadn't really experienced. And I think this more widespread acceptance was definitely behind renewed interest and these prices entering sort of a much bigger move higher. But over the last couple of days, we've seen a reversal. So if you look at the prices of Bitcoin, which we'll look at in more detail in a second, and Ethereum as well, we've seen these markets hit by around 20% off those all-time highs that they reached. And I think that the question is, as ever, in a market that's rising, and even though these are extreme rises, it's still a market that's been going up. Is a 20% hit a buying opportunity? Or actually, should we be worried that the top is in? Even though the trend is still up, and I'm a big fan of trend following, I do think that perhaps we have seen an important top for these markets, but more of that when we jump on the platform. In recent days, we have seen a stronger US dollar. A stronger US dollar will put some pressure on assets quoted in US dollars or against the US dollar, like Bitcoin, like gold, like Ethereum, these sort of markets. So I think a return of confidence, albeit short term so far, in the US dollar has put some pressure on the cryptocurrencies. Of course, here in the UK, the regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority, its ban of marketing and making trading, leverage trading available on cryptocurrencies came into effect. I always wondered how much of an impact that would have. Clearly, if you're trading crypto and you're in the UK, trading it through spread bets or CFDs. That has restricted your access. So I think that's maybe had something of an impact. But I'm sure most of the people who hold these assets will still find ways to get involved in cryptocurrencies. But perhaps we're seeing a short-term impact from the regulator's steps that have come into effect over the last few days. Then there's a phrase I hate, profit taking, because it assumes that markets only go down because people have decided to take their profits. But given that, the bias overwhelmingly in crypto markets is for people to sit with their positions and not go short so much, although you can, although it's mainly to sit there and hold. I think there may well be an element of profit taking. Anything that doubles in 3 weeks is bound to have people thinking, well, I've got a massive paper profit here, perhaps I should take some of it. So I think when we do see weakness, the risk is it gets over exaggerated. But there's also the worry, has the price just gone too far? Again, it's doubled in under a month. Let's not think this is a normal market, when we see those sort of performances. And that's what makes me think that perhaps we have seen this important short-term top, given how far the cryptocurrencies have come over the short term. And if we look back to the lows from last year, we've seen incredible triple-digit percentage gains. As much as some people would hope, this stuff doesn't go on forever. So I do wonder, have we seen a short-term top? Let's talk about the levels to watch, then jump back onto the platform. So we'll focus on Bitcoin. The all-time high was around $41,760, about that sort of level just from a few days ago. On the way down, we had an intraday high, an important one. Again, I think just ahead of 40,000. That comes in at $39,000. But as usual in a falling market, it's the support that's perhaps a bit more interesting. For me, the next major support, just from the beginning of the month, just below 30,000, 4th of Jan lows, coming in around 29,900. You would expect, or I would expect, if we saw more Bitcoin weakness for here, that 30,000 area is going to be an important one. But let's put some color on these numbers and see just how far the slide in the cryptos could go. Take a look at Bitcoin in more detail. So let's look at this Bitcoin chart in a bit more detail. So looking at it here, we have, I think this is the important trend to focus on. It's the run from mid-December, the move through $20,000, and then seeing it doubling. If you look at the RSI, I don't think indicators are that important in a market like this that's clearly, driven by there's been a big element of momentum behind this move, perhaps FOMO, the fear of missing out that we've seen in other markets over the past 12 months. That it went overbought on the RSI mid-December and then pretty much stayed overbought until it came out of it over the last couple of days or so. So I would question how useful things like RSIs are in markets like this that are moving so much. And I think what I want to do is really break down the price action. So I want to have a look at the hourly chart, take a look at it from middle of December and just see where the big levels are. If you want to be a buyer now, where would your stop loss go? Let's put this into a short-term chart and look at things in more detail. So my gut feeling on Bitcoin is that we have had an important top at 42,000. Because there's been, I think, so much mania over recent weeks, because the market has doubled as well, and because I think plenty of people have got used to it going up almost every day. And clearly that's changed over the last couple of days. So I think there's been something of a psychological shock to maybe newer entrants to this market. So I do think that perhaps it will take some time, famous last words, until we see the 40,000 levels conquered again. But of course, trading shouldn't be about gut feel. We should be trading what's in front of us. So let me put my own biases to one side on this, and let's focus on the price. And looking at the trend, as we do on all the different markets that we look at, this does just look like a pullback. So actually, if I was going to have my disciplined trading head on, I'd be looking for buying opportunities down here. Let's look at this in more detail. Let's just focus on the price action. So we've got our trend from 11th of December here, about 18,000. And then moving higher, we've got various touches along the way. Clearly, we had the break of 20,000 about the second, third week of December. Even this spike sell-off here, 4th of January, held above that trend line. That moved to 28,000. The market had gone from 34 down to 28. So a $6,000 move and almost 20% move, which is not dissimilar to the sort of move that we've seen since the 8th of January to where we are now. So, moves, sell-offs of this magnitude are not uncommon in the recent history, i.e. the last 8 days of Bitcoin. So I think just because it's sold off a lot, perhaps we shouldn't get too bearish and think it's going to collapse from here. But I think there's a really obvious level to watch. If we're trading with the trend, the market's currently trading above 34,000. I think a really aggressive trade would be to be a buyer with stops below 32. So the most recent lows for Bitcoin. I wouldn't be putting stops there. So to give it a bit more room, I think what we need to look at is the 30,000 psychological level. Also ties up with the lows, the January the 5th lows, I think is a pretty good area. So to watch for any potential support for Bitcoin. So I think the next couple of days are going to be really interesting to see if 30,000 holds. And then I think for the more conservative, to give the market really a bit of room sort of trader, stops the other side of 28,000, which is well beyond that trend line, the other side of that spiky low from the 4th of January. So 28 to about 30,000 is really my big area of support to watch for Bitcoin. Let's look at this sell-off in a bit more detail. I think we are still in a downtrend. We're only about a day into this downtrend, but we do have a succession of lower highs and lower lows down here. The market has made a new low for the down move just in the last 5 or 6 hours or so, trading down to 32,350. It's bounced back off that, but it's a market, I think, that's still under a little bit of pressure. So I think in the very short term, at least, even if you are a massive Bitcoin bull, don't be surprised to see this market perhaps come under a bit more pressure from here. I think what I'd like to see, if we are going to be a buyer, if I am going to put my bias to one side and think the euphoria has gone too far and we're due a much deeper correction, I want to see it stabilize around these levels ahead of sort of 30, 32 the next couple of days. I think this is really big potential support down here. Whenever we've seen Bitcoin come back to this trend line over the last month, we've seen the buyers come back in. I think if we start to lose $30,000, I think people who are perhaps late into this trend might decide to throw in the towel. And I do think I think lots of markets, it's a psychological game between buyers and sellers, but I think even more so with Bitcoin, because people had got used to it just rising fairly relentlessly in recent weeks. This will have delivered quite a shock, I think, over the last few days. I think if we lose 30,000, the risk is for a deeper sell-off, targeting 28,000 next, perhaps back to where we were the end of last year, around 26, sort of 29,000, that sort of area. But for now, that trend is still intact. So I've got to bite my tongue and look to see if the buyers come back in, and really looking for them to come in 30 to 32,000 and seeing if we can stage some sort of recovery from here. But I do think either way, even though that trend is still up, a lot of the short to medium term momentum has been knocked out of this market, but it has doubled in 3 weeks. Do we expect it to double again in the next 3 weeks? Well, some people may do, but I think maybe that's a bit too optimistic. So perhaps we have slightly more normal, relaxed trading from here, but just keep an eye on that trend line the next couple of days. I think it's going to be really interesting to see if it can hold. So it's been a really exciting market these last few weeks, last few months. Perhaps we have seen a short-term top. We'll come back and do an update. But from me, David Jones and Capital.com, we'll leave things there. Good luck with your trading. For more trading videos just like this, please subscribe to our channel.